Welcome to our channel. Today we explore a controversy that has shaken the very foundations of American media, the clash between Donald Trump, the Federal Communications Commission, and late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. This is not just a story about one comedian or one television network. It is a story about power, censorship, and the fragile line between politics and free speech in America. The controversy began when Donald Trump, while refusing to release the Epstein files, shifted his attention toward Jimmy Kimmel. What seemed like a feud between a former president and a late-night host quickly evolved into something far larger, a test of the First Amendment and a question of how far government power could reach into American entertainment. Trump's attacks, amplified on his social platform, Truth Social, targeted Kimmel relentlessly. He demanded consequences, mocked ABC, and even threatened lawsuits. In response, Disney, the parent company of ABC, briefly suspended Kimmel. What might have been a small network decision suddenly turned into a national debate about free expression. But the irony was clear. Instead of silencing Kimmel, Trump had transformed him into a symbol, a lightning rod of resistance. Disney, even if Kimmel's ratings fell to near zero, could not remove him now. He had become a public icon of defiance against political intimidation. The numbers told their own story. For months, Kimmel's shows averaged only a few 100,000 views online. But after Trump's attacks, one monologue skyrocketed to more than 6.7 million views in just days. His YouTube uploads, once modest, were now breaking records. On television, more than 6.5 million viewers tuned in, and across streaming platforms, the numbers exceeded 25 million. In trying to diminish him, Trump had made Jimmy Kimmel more popular than ever. Yet beneath the humor and headlines, a deeper legal and political battle was unfolding. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr had gone on record, openly suggesting that ABC's broadcast license might be at risk if it continued to air Kimmel's show. These were not idle words. The FCC, after all, holds the power to revoke licenses, a power that strikes at the very survival of networks like ABC. Legal scholars were quick to point out the danger. A private company may choose whom to platform, but when government officials threaten to silence speech, that crosses into unconstitutional territory. In fact, just a year earlier, the Supreme Court had issued a unanimous decision in a similar case, ruling that when government pressure forces a private entity to suppress speech, it becomes an act of censorship. This precedent directly applied. And yet, networks like Nexstar and Sinclair, controlling vast portions of the American broadcast market, complied quietly. Why? Because both companies were awaiting multi-billion-dollar mergers that required FCC approval. Instead of challenging the threats in court, where they likely would have won, they surrendered to political power. And so, for a moment, Jimmy Kimmel was off the air. But in the silence, his presence only grew louder. Across Hollywood, voices of protest rose. Actors like Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, Pedro Pascal, and Diego Luna, stars of Disney's own franchises, condemned the suspension. Viewers canceled Disney Plus subscriptions in anger. The backlash was swift, costly, and impossible to ignore. Disney, caught between politics and profits, reversed its decision. Jimmy Kimmel returned. When he did, his words were sharp. "This show is not important. What is important is that we live in a country that allows us to have a show like this. It was no longer just comedy. It was a declaration, a reminder that the freedom to speak, to joke, to criticize is the heartbeat of democracy. But the controversy did not end there. Trump doubled down, promising new lawsuits and mocking Kimmel's ratings, even as those ratings surged. His obsession revealed a deeper truth, that in attempting to silence critics, he had only magnified them. Meanwhile, the American public was left with difficult questions. If one comedian could be sidelined under political pressure, what protection did ordinary journalists, writers, or creators truly have? If a handful of corporations could control what millions watch, how free was free speech really? This was no longer about late-night television. It was about the future of American democracy. In the end, Trump's attempt to weaken Kimmel gave him something else entirely, a mandate powered by millions of viewers, billions in corporate stakes, and a renewed debate about government overreach. Jimmy Kimmel became more than a comedian. He became a case study, a living example of how fragile and how precious the First Amendment remains. And though the headlines may fade, the battle over freedom of speech in America has only just begun.